So I'm beginning with an apology yet again for the delay in putting out this video. Uh, there have been a lot of things going on here. I'm not going to get into all of those details, but it's just a number of things that have made it difficult to get in front of a camera. Even when I did get in front of the camera, the I could never produce anything that was useful. In fact, just 2 days ago, I was sitting here making this video on my cell phone, and just the wind in that the microphone on the cell phone picked up was just so bad that that I couldn't use the footage that I captured. This is now take two for this one because the wind blew this camera and the tripod over as I was chatting. I'm on a different camera. This one's I've got a microphone that fits this one, so I'm hoping that this will work. I don't know. So part of this is equipment issues. Part of it are sort of environmental issues. Yeah, I guess I could try and create something like a studio inside to record, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm living in the tropics and I'm working outside, and why you would want to listen to some guy update you on what's going on outside while he's sitting in a environmentally controlled little room. That just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, what's going on? I'm reaching forward to hold the tripod down to try and keep all of this stable. What's going on is I need to fill you in, finish the issue of the permits because that's kind of finished. And when I do that, it'll let you know kind of where we are in terms of the property and what we're thinking about going forward. But as I've been working through this issue of the permits, it's got me thinking about other sorts of things. So the work through the permits, the fact that in 3 days we will have been here for 3 years, and so I was thinking about doing some sort of retrospective as well as a few other things. Conversations I've had and whatnot have all sort of pointed towards a sort of line of thinking, a line of observations and videos that I think are coming up. I know that's a little vague, and I'm intending to keep it a little vague. Just letting you know that there's a subject change coming after this one. And this one is, I think, pretty much simply permits. So let's put this issue to bed, shall we? In order to do that, I think it helps for you to remember or to learn what the property is like, how kind of it's laid out, and what it was that I was hoping to do, at least initially. So the property is shaped like a flag on a flagpole is kind of the easiest way to think about it. And that flagpole is 1,500 feet long, 30 feet wide. It's just a narrow strip of land that connects my property to the public road. And it's property that I own. It's part of the parcel, but it's just a narrow strip. And so when we bought the land, we figured, okay, we have to put the driveway in. And I spoke with a fellow who's local here, and he's in the heavy equipment business. And I said, what can you do for me? So he came out to the property, walked the property with me, and he never gave me an estimate, never gave me a dollar figure. Instead, he gave me lots of dollar figures. As we were walking along, he said, "Oh, you're going to need, this piece of equipment, and you're going to need it for at least 2 weeks, and it costs $550. I forget whether that was a day or a week, but and oh, you got to pay for the operator because you're not certified to operate this sort of stuff, and you need this piece of equipment, and this piece of equipment, and this piece of equipment, and this piece of equipment." And again, no real dollar figure at the end, but lots of dollars adding up quickly, right? Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And I thought, this is crazy. Number one, I'm retired. I've got all the time in the world. Number two, I've operated heavy equipment before. Yes, I don't have the the formal certification, but I know how to do the work. I may not be, expert at it. There are folks who can make these things positively dance. I mean, they're impressive. I'm not there, but I know what I'm doing. And it's cheaper to buy the equipment rather than pay this guy all of the money that he seems to want. I think he just believed I was some rich Americano, and he was seeing dollar signs. So I bought the backhoe thinking I'll enjoy it, I'll have fun with it, I'll take my time, I'll put the driveway in, and I'll just cut it into where the house we expect will be built, and then the construction company and the engineers and whatnot can make their way back to what we expect will be the build site. They can bring their equipment in. They can do the soils testing to make sure that we can build on that site. They can do soils testing for septic fields and that sort of stuff, but they'll have access to it is sort of the issue. And then once we agree on the site, once we agree on the design and that sort of stuff, then they can come in, they can clear the site as much as they need. They can bring their cement trucks in and all of the rest, right? So all I was thinking was I can save myself a little money and have some fun on a backhoe, creating this driveway. And then once the house was built and we moved there, the backyard is going to be old pasture. It is sort of old pasture. It's just wildly overgrown. And I was going to cut that up into smaller units, paddocks, so that I could do some rotational grazing. And the backhoe I figured would be useful for that. And then I would, over the course of weeks, months, even, slowly remove trees from the paddocks, leaving some for the shade for the animals. But that was sort of the idea. It turns out I cannot do that. I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not permitted to do that. And so once I discovered, oh crap, I need permits to remove individual trees, I thought, okay, so where do I go? How do I get this done? And a fellow that I met here, we've become good friends. He has a cousin who works for the Department of Natural Resources here, which is Recursos Naturales, so it's DRNA in the Spanish acronym. And his cousin said, "Oh yeah, there's an office. It's kind of tucked out of the way in sort of a strip mall. It's almost the way that it works." He says, "But yeah, that's where you go, and it's a pretty easy, simple, straightforward process. You give them all of the information they need about the ownership of the property and the property designation and whatnot. And if you show them pictures of the trees you want to remove, they may very well be able to issue you a permit on the spot." Well, the problem with that is the land is so overgrown, and I want to put the driveway down one side of that 30-foot span. I'm not quite sure what trees I want to remove and or need to remove, or which ones I can just sort of jog around or whatnot. I need to clear that a bit more of vegetation at least before I can photograph trees. But I did photograph some, and I said I'm pretty confident I need to take this one out and this one out and this one out. If you give me permits to remove those, I should be fine. Anyway, at least that's what I was thinking. Well, anyway, when I spoke to the folks in that office, I wound up speaking to the guy who is, I guess, the director of that regional office. A nice guy. And that's pretty much been our experience here dealing with bureaucracy. The people are wonderful. The people are excellent. The bureaucracy's a nightmare. And they are, as bureaucrats, they're sort of bound by the rules. They might agree with me that the rules are foolish, but that's what they've got to do. So they're frequently, very, very nice, very sweet, very sympathetic, but not always accommodating because they're stuck with the rules. Anyway, this fellow in this office said, look, number one, what we do is we issue permits for incidental work. That is, sort of little bitty stuff, not big construction work. And so you want to cut down a tree? We're your guy. 2 or 3? Okay. You want to clear the property? Nope, that's not us. That's a different office. That's a work permit. Okay. Well, all I want to do is the driveway, so I think I can get away with, removing a few, 3, 4 trees. He said, okay. He said, however, work permits mean work equipment, heavy equipment. The Department of Natural Resources doesn't issue work permits, so no heavy equipment. And I said, oh. I said, well, so when I remove the tree, he says you have to cut it, and that's all you can do is cut it. And I said, well, it'll grow right back. These things will just grow right back like a weed. And he says, yep, that's right. Okay. Again, sympathetic, rule bound, can't deal with any of that. And I said, well, I've got a backhoe, and I'd really like to dig the tree out, because then I remove the roots and it won't grow back. And he says, nope, you can't do that. It's heavy equipment, and you'd be disturbing the soil. And we can't issue permits to let you disturb the soil. All we can do is issue a permit to cut the tree. And I thought, well, okay, if I'm gonna make the driveway, I guess I can cut it, right at the soil level, and okay, we can drive over it, and maybe driving over it will keep it from growing up. I don't know. It's all they can do. Fine, best you can do. And I said, well, can I use the backhoe not to dig, but to use the excavator bucket and those teeth and kind of rake out the agave and the brush and all of the rest? And he said, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. No, you can't do that because it's heavy equipment. And I went, aha. So the short of it was, he could give me permits if I could show him photos of the specific trees that I wanted to cut. And it would be a permit simply to cut those trees down. But I can't use heavy equipment, according to him, to do anything there. And I thought, well, okay, crap. So I bought a string trimmer, an Echo brand string trimmer. So it's a good trimmer. I like it. But it's not going to cut through this stuff, this heavy stuff, like agave. And so I bought a brush cutter attachment to it, and I thought, okay, let me see what I can do with this. And no, you just, it's the only way that you can get rid of these agave patches is with heavy equipment. So kind of the more that I worked with it, the more that I dealt with it, the more I realized, crap, this office, even if I could, get to the point, this office isn't going to help. It's not what I need. It's not going to help. And then the other thing is that as I was going through this, and I've got lot number 5 of 5 parcels here, so I'm all the way at the end, which I like. But it means I've got the longest driveway to put in. But again, I prefer to be tucked away there. Whoever owns number 3 hired someone to come out and clear the land. Do work, not incidental work, not cut a few trees, but clear the land. I presume they had permits for it and all the rest. I don't know. It's not my business. I don't know. But I watched them do this. And they had 2 pieces of equipment. They had a tracked dozer, and then they had a tracked excavator. And I will confess to the sin of envy. I was drooling over these pieces of equipment. They were fantastic. And I worked with the guys, chatted with the guys who were operating them, because they weren't quite clear how the land was laid out and all of the rest, so I kind of walked them through it so they could see it, and they went, oh, okay. And away that they went. And with these 2 pieces of equipment, they cleared a parcel the same size as mine in I'm pretty confident it was just 3 days, maybe 4, but certainly no more than 4. So I watched that and I thought, well, what the heck? If it's that fast and it's just a couple of pieces of equipment, I'm thinking this was probably less than a couple of grand that they paid to get this done. I mean, it was beautiful. Now, all of the trees and stuff that they pulled up, and they ripped them all up by the roots. All of those that they pulled up, they just piled up, and so they still need to be disposed of. But I'm happy to do that on my parcel. If I could bring those guys in with their dozer and an excavator and have them do the same thing for me and just pile it all up, well then with my backhoe, I'm quite happy to move that stuff around and and dispose of it over time as as need be. So I looked at this and I went up thinking, you know, I'm going to get in trouble potentially if I try and do this work with my backhoe and no permit. So I don't want that. Number one. Number two, uh, the construction company is going to come in and clear, the site anyway for the building site and the septic site and whatnot. Well, why not just in a few days clear the whole thing? Uh, and so I'm kind of wondering, you know, I like the backhoe, and I'm sure going forward I'll find plenty of use for the backhoe. But my initial plan, which was simply to create this driveway so that the engineers could get back and do their work, uh, just doesn't seem to make sense anymore. So I've got the backhoe. I've been kind of working at clearing this up, and I may do a little bit of raking with the excavator bucket to see if I can get through some of the agave a little better or not. Just make it a little tidier. But otherwise, I'm gonna make my way with the backhoe to the shed that I built, and I've got a trickle charger on the battery on the backhoe. I'll just plug it into the power of the shed and park the thing and let it sit there until Patty and I, get the construction company and the engineers out to walk the land again. And if they agree, yes, this is a project that we would like to do, and sit down and talk with them about the design, the engineering, the blueprints, and all the rest. And as we go forward, uh, I'm not gonna try and pull a permit from the Department of Natural Resources because their permits are not for the sorts of things that I need to do anyway. And secondly, what I need to be done is going to be done as part of the construction project, it appears, and it's going to happen a lot faster and a lot cheaper than the local guy told me 2 years ago. So that's it. No Department of Natural Resource permits, and very little sorts of stuff to be done with the backhoe until the house is built, until the land is cleared for us. The house is built, and we're living out there. So until that time, um, I'll be spending very little time going out to the property, so there's going to be very little of that sort of stuff going on. In the interim, I've been thinking about, as I said, conversations with some of my friends here. Um, these things are all related in the ring. Conversations with some of my friends here, 3 years retrospective. How has it gone? Retiring to Puerto Rico 3 years later, I will say we have very few regrets. That it's gone remarkably well, beautifully for us. So we are delighted, with some headaches and some hassles. But there's that. There is the World Cup, and I'm watching our European neighbors, particularly European neighbors, coming and visiting America and being amazed at what they see, which is making me think as well. And then, of course, this weekend we celebrated as a nation our semi-quincentennial. I'm 60 years old, so I was 10 years old at the bicentennial. I remember that. And I will tell you, the mood of the nation is remarkably different. It's much more dour now than it was in 1976. 1976 was not a great year. It was we were having some tough times as a nation, yet we were there's a much greater feeling of unity as a nation then, rather than the stark divisions that we're struggling under now. And so, all of these things kind of come together in a way that makes me want to talk really about our semiquincentennial, about what happened in 1776, about the principles of the American regime, of the liberal republic that we created there, this radical experiment in a form of government that had never been seen before in the history of the world, one predicated upon what the founders called a new science of politics. And so all of these things are sort of related. And so I think I will spend a few videos going through what's going through my mind in this time of what ought to be a time of celebration, what also I think ought to be a time of retrospection, uh, and what ought to be a time of some introspection. So uh, if you have an interest in that, I hope you do. By all means, stick around. This is, I guess, where I do all of the like, share, subscribe kind of stuff. But like this video if you're so inclined. Share it if you were thinking of coming to Puerto Rico, or you know people who are coming to Puerto Rico, and this is perhaps a resource for them. Share it if you're an old friend of mine and chatting with others and said, "Oh, what's going on with Warner and Patty and all the rest?" So do that sort of thing. Subscribe if you haven't already and you'd like to tag along. Subscribe if you'd like to hear the observations of a concerned, and I pat myself on the back, a somewhat thoughtful American on the state of his country as it turns 250 years old. For those of you who don't know me all that well and my background, when I say that I'm going to sort of wax, I don't know if it's poetic, but wax poetic about the American experiment. I spent 25 years, a little more than 25 years as a college professor. The last 24 of those at Hampton-Sydney College in Virginia. And I was a professor of political science there for 25 years, frequently the chair of the department. For 15 of those years, I was the director of the Center for the Study of the Constitution, which is an international association of scholars of American constitutional law and constitutional politics. I am a subject matter expert. I guess that's probably the most modest way of putting this. Are there people smarter than me on this issue? Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. But any idiot can post anything to YouTube. Just check my playlist and you'll see. But I've actually got some training and some experience and a lot of work in this area. So these are the musings of someone who has actually devoted a lot of time and a lot of effort to thinking about these sorts of things. So I hope you'll join me, and if so, please subscribe so that you don't miss anything. If you've got questions about the permits and the state of the property and the state of the bill and all of the rest, by all means, drop them in the comments below. I do read all of the comments when there are comments. So, if you got questions, drop them down there. If you just want to say hi, say hi. That's in a lot of ways what these videos have been about for me anyway. It's just checking in and saying hi to old friends. If you've got suggestions for videos or that sort of thing, let me know. But anyway, I will endeavor to get back to you on a much more regular basis, much more frequent basis, particularly as we move into sort of pontificating, which is, as I said, I was a professor. I'm kind of good at that. See you soon.